Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of the Swiss Guard murders at the Vatican in 1998? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background in this case. I'll move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Vatican City is an independent city-state in Rome, Italy. It is home to about 450 people, including the Pope. The city-state sits on 121 acres. Some people may question the benefits of living in the smallest state in the world, both by area and population. But I imagine one benefit would be the line at the DMV is always short. The Pontifical Swiss Guard is a small military force which operates in Vatican City. The job of this military unit, which is often simply referred to as the Swiss Guard, is to protect the Pope and the Apostolic Palace, where the Pope lives. The Swiss Guard was created in 1506, which makes it one of the oldest military units in the world. They use weapons that originated hundreds of years ago, like the halberd, but they also use modern weaponry, like rifles and pistols. There are many requirements for a person to be recruited into the Swiss Guard, like to qualify. An individual must be male, Catholic, have Swiss citizenship, have at least a high school diploma, be between 19 and 30 years old, and have completed basic training with the Swiss Armed Forces. The formal dress uniform of the Swiss Guard is custom made for each soldier and weighs 8 pounds. It has a distinctive look. It's red, yellow, and blue, and inspired by the Renaissance. It's definitely not designed as camouflage, unless it was intended for soldiers fighting in the battles of the tie-dye apocalypse. The Swiss Guard comprises about 100 men who live in a barracks at the foot of the Apostolic Palace, which is where the Pope spends a lot of his time. On May 6 of each year, there is an elaborate ceremony held where the new Swiss Guards are sworn in and various awards are distributed. This takes me to the timeline of the crime. On May 4, 1998, just before 9 p.m., a nun who lived and worked in the Swiss Guard complex heard sounds on a staircase. When she investigated, she did not see anybody on the landing. A few moments later, she heard loud noises from the apartment next door. This apartment was occupied by 43-year-old Lieutenant Colonel Alois Estermann, who was the commander of the Swiss Guard, and his wife, a former model named Gladys Romero. What the nun did not know at the time was that 3 people were dead in the apartment. Here's what happened. 23-year-old Lance Corporal Cedric Tournay used his Vatican City-issued Sig Sauer 75, a semi-automatic pistol chambered in 9mm, to shoot the lieutenant colonel twice, killing him. He then shot at the lieutenant colonel's wife, but missed. He fired another shot, which struck and killed her. After committing 2 homicides, the Lance Corporal turned the gun on himself. It's worth noting that the terms Lance Corporal and Vice Corporal were both used to describe Cedric's rank. I'll just use Lance Corporal. Just after 9 p.m., the nun who heard the murders investigated by opening the door to the apartment. After seeing blood on the floor, she notified one of the Swiss Guards. When he entered the apartment, he found 3 bodies. As news of the murder spread through Vatican City, everyone was in disbelief. To say that Vatican City did not have a crime problem is a bit of an understatement. It is literally surrounded by a wall, and everyone is there voluntarily with a shared purpose, at least in theory. Pope John Paul II, who was the Pope during this time, was notified about the murders. The Vatican released a statement 3 hours after the deaths, which indicated that Tournay must have killed the lieutenant colonel and his wife in a fit of madness. Reportedly, the lieutenant colonel and the lance corporal had a bit of a disagreement 3 months earlier. Tournay had spent one night in February outside of the barracks without permission. Lieutenant Colonel Estermann admonished him and, as a punishment, refused to grant him a 3-year service medal, which would have been awarded on May 6, 2 days after the murders. The Pope's official spokesman downplayed the dramatic elements of the crime, saying that it could have happened in any other community of individuals. He made it seem as though there were no secrets, no story here. It was a crime based on damaged pride and impulsive behavior. On February 8, 1999, just over 9 months after the deaths, the results of the official Vatican investigation were released. The official statement was filled with nameless references, like sister, doctor, or sergeant. The only people specified by name were the 3 who were killed. The report mentioned the motive about the Lance Corporal not getting his award. This was still believed to be the major contributor to his behavior. The report indicated that Tournay had a cyst in his brain. It was described as being the size of a pigeon's egg, which is kind of an obscure reference. This is kind of like saying the cyst was the size of a timing belt tensioner bolt for a 1996 Toyota Tacoma with the 3.4-liter 6-cylinder engine. Would most people know how big a pigeon's egg is, other than it's smaller than an adult pigeon? I looked it up. It's about 3 centimeters. In addition to the cyst, Tournay had bronchitis and had been using marijuana. Perhaps some or all of these factors and conditions could have led to the murders, but either way, from the standpoint of the Vatican, the case was closed. There was no scandal, no conspiracy. It was a double murder mostly based on revenge and impulsivity. This explanation has not been satisfactory for many people. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Estermann was very well liked by Vatican officials. He grew up on a farm in Switzerland. He was the oldest of 5 children. He joined the Swiss Army and later in 1980 became a member of the Swiss Guard. He once told friends that he had 2 passions, the military and the church, and the Swiss Guard brings them together. He went on over 30 trips where he functioned as the Pope's chief bodyguard. During the attempted assassination of the Pope in 1981, Estermann shielded the Pope with his body. He was promoted to major in 1983. The promotion was contingent on him getting married, which he did in December of that year. There had been rumors that he was gay, which of course would not make him the front-runner in a popularity contest in a place like the Vatican. After the murders, the funeral mass for Estermann and his wife was held at St. Peter's Basilica. Moving to item number 2, Cedric Tournay was not nearly as popular as Estermann, even before the murders. He was described as disrespectful and disinhibited. He was polite some of the time and well liked by many of the other Swiss guards. Eventually, Tournay became upset with the way the Swiss guards were managed. He came to believe that the military unit was incompetent and not capable of providing a sufficient level of protection for the Pope. He suggested changes, but his ideas were rejected. Nobody wanted to hear the opinions of a relatively new Swiss guard who was that young. Tournay was interested in getting married, but one of the women he was pursuing may have become pregnant by another man. So he was facing some romantic issues in addition to his problems with life in Vatican City. Tournay was treated a little differently than Estermann after the deaths. Instead of St. Peter's Basilica, Tournay's funeral was at St. Anne's Church. This is still in Vatican City, just not as high profile. During the homily, a Swiss bishop said God will forgive Tournay for what he did because of the fragility of the human condition. Item number 3. To bolster the official story of the crime, the Vatican spokesman said that Tournay had written a letter to his family and given it to a friend of his in the barracks. The contents of the note were not made public at that time, but its mere presence suggested that Tournay knew his time was coming to an end. Later, the contents of the note were leaked to the media, which was a bit of a surprise. Here's a summary of what the Lance Corporal wrote. The letter was addressed to his mother. He asked for forgiveness, but placed the blame for his behavior on others by saying, quote, "They were the ones who drove me on," unquote. Apparently, he was referring to more than one person, which represents an unexpected twist in this case. Tournay said that he was due to receive the medal for the 3 years of service, but the lieutenant colonel denied him the award. Tournay had put up with injustices for these 3 years. He suggested that he committed the murders to do his service for the guards and for the Catholic Church. He swore to give his life for the Pope, and this is what he was doing. He apologized for leaving his mother alone, but his duty called. It appears as though Tournay tried to reconcile his desire to commit murder with his Catholic faith and with his duty to protect the Pope. In his mind, he died a hero. Before he ended his life, he kneeled, as if he was saying one final prayer and preparing for the afterlife. Tournay was violating the expectations of his faith by committing murder. One could argue that not committing murder is a pretty popular rule in most religions. He needed some way to rationalize his behavior. He may have been delusional, but I think it's more likely he had vulnerable narcissism. He was self-centered, insecure, vindictive, full of shame, and had a sense of entitlement. If he really believed that he needed to stop Esterman to save the Pope, why did he kill Esterman's wife? It seems clear this was about revenge. Which brings me to item number 4. What was Tournay's motive? As I mentioned, Lieutenant Colonel Esterman was the commander of the Swiss Guard. His official appointment was going to take place on May 6, 2 days after his murder. So that was going to be a big day. It was the day when Tournay was going to be embarrassed by not getting his award, and when his boss, who denied him the award, was going to be honored by being appointed as the highest-ranking member of the Swiss Guard. The timing of this attack was important because it prevented that ceremony. By killing Esterman, Tournay accomplished 2 goals. He prevented his own shame and prevented Esterman from being honored as the commander. Furthermore, the lieutenant colonel never directly informed Tournay about not winning the award. Rather, the lance corporal found out accidentally. So it appears as though, at this award ceremony, Tournay would be expecting to receive this award, and when he was ready to go on stage to accept it, or however they do that, the lieutenant colonel would say, "Not so fast." Maybe Tournay wanted to give Esterman a surprise in return. Item number 5. Anytime the Vatican becomes the topic of discussion, conspiracy theories are not far behind. This case is no exception. Here are just a few of the many conspiracy theories that have been put forth to explain this crime. Tournay had a brief affair with Esterman before Esterman found another lover. The lance corporal was upset by this, which led to the murders. Tournay was not the real killer. The 3 victims were killed by an assassin because Esterman was a spy for the former East German government. The Vatican was involved in some type of arms trading deal, and the 3 victims were killed as part of that business. Well, this makes sense. When most people think of arms trading, they think of AK-47s and rocket-propelled grenades. But what about the market for halberds and swords? Somebody has to provide those weapons, and the Vatican is in a great position to do that. Maybe the Swiss Guards are actually just models for the weapons. Like the Vatican arms dealer can say, "Look how good your soldiers will look dressed up as halberdiers. You have nothing to fear from the light cavalry attacks that have been plaguing your area for so long." Looking at the last conspiracy theory, Esterman was a member of a group called Opus Dei, which strongly connected personal Christian holiness with the warrior mentality. A group of Masons was also loose in the Swiss Guard. Both parties were trying to take over. The 3 people were killed as part of this power struggle. So these 2 groups were trying to take over the smallest military in the world. It does not appear as though they had a lot of ambition for being secret, powerful, evil conspirators. These conspiracy theories are difficult to believe because there's really not much evidence to support any of them. The Vatican is known to be secretive, which I think only pushes more people to believe that something dramatic is going on inside the walls. In reality, the truth is probably much less sensational. Now moving to my final thoughts. I think that Cedric Tournay started out with the best intentions. He joined the Swiss Guard to honor his religious beliefs and to serve in a military capacity at the same time. Therefore, his motives were similar to the motives that we see with Esterman. Like the Vatican, the Swiss Guard is heavily rooted in tradition. Changes are slow to occur and do not happen through any type of democracy, because it's not a democracy. It's run by one person, the Pope. If a person joins the Swiss Guard looking to reshape it, they are going to be disappointed. A formal and rigid structure like the Swiss Guard leaves a person with only limited ways to express frustration and no way to create any type of transformation. I think when Tournay was rejected in so many ways, he simply could not accept it. Therefore, he made the rejection about something else. He made it about the Swiss Guard not providing good protection to the Pope. He made it about a conspiracy against him. He was the victim of terrible offenses. He was a warrior for justice who no one could recognize. Tournay became trapped in his own narcissism. He believed in his greatness to such an extent that if people failed to recognize it, he felt justified in taking homicidal actions. Those are my thoughts on the Swiss Guard murders. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be as intriguing as arms dealers who are a few centuries behind on technology. Thanks for watching.